Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 5 of Global Contenders, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of touring cars of various classes, some of which are real, others which aren't. PD originals or fictional race cars which are to some degree usually inspired by real touring cars or race cars, but aren't necessarily that realistic. They can take some liberties with the spec, and to some degree we kind of allow them that, because it's not a real car, so it doesn't really hurt anybody. And this is one of those fictional vehicles. It's one of a number, in fact, of fictional Skyline or GTR based touring cars featured on GT6. You've got an R32, R33, R34 and R35 based touring car, all with a similar visual look, similar paint kind of style, the red and grey standard colour, and with specs that actually improve with each subsequent generation. Now we're reviewing the R33 first, for no particular reason, it's just the one I picked, and this model is inspired to some degree by a real race car, interestingly though, not a touring car, because visually this vehicle is very close to the R33 Skyline that actually ran in the GT1 class in the Le Mans in, I think it was 1994 and 1995 if I remember correctly. And to put this car into some perspective, that real Skyline finished second only to the McLaren F1 in the Le Mans. That's pretty impressive, to say the least. So a touring car inspired by that bodes pretty well. So the question is, does it live up to that potential? The same potential to some degree that the R32, 4 and 5 have? Well, yes, I would say that it does. Now this car is powered by, unsurprisingly, a 2.6 litre engine. You can fully tune it to 887 horsepower and 720 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs in at 1115 kilos, which, given the fact that it is still all-wheel drive, is certainly not bad. Puts out just under 800 horsepower per tonne, which is among the higher of this class. Not necessarily the highest, but among the higher category. The PP fully tuned is very high for a touring car, 651, meaning that it is actually higher than a lot of the official DTM machines. Again, that bodes very well for the car. And the price, along with all of the other Skyline touring cars, is outstandingly good value. Many of the DTM machines tend to cost at least 1 million credits. This car, on the other hand, only costs 234,000. That's really, really good value. Now, as far as pure straight line performance, the Skylines pretty much get gradually quicker. With the exception, interestingly, of the R33 and R34, they are very similar. You'd expect the R34 to have a massive jump, which doesn't really happen. This car has straight line performance which is definitely good enough to take on any DTM machine. It's not necessarily quite as quick for pure top speed as, say, the CLK touring car, but simultaneously it has more than enough acceleration and top speed to take on any other touring car on any track. As far as handling, well, it's an R33 Skyline based touring car, so it's never going to be bad. The handling is very good, and one of the advantages, of course, is the all-wheel drive. Now, some other DTM machines, such as the Calibra and the Alpha 155, do also utilise an all-wheel drive system, so it doesn't stand out that much, certainly not as much as it would in the GT class, but at the same time it gives you a nice advantage in all weather conditions. And when it's raining, all-wheel drive does make a big difference. You can put a lot more power down and have a lot more control over the car, and the car will have less of an inclination to run away with itself. Now, as far as overall ability, this car is very good. Now, personally, I don't use any of the Skyline touring cars all that much in racing, purely because I personally prefer driving a real machine, even if it's not necessarily quite as quick. Because the fact is, this Skyline, along with the others as well, and the R35 GTR, can beat the majority of the other touring cars in this series under the majority of circumstances. They're brilliant race cars. And to be honest, I don't really feel that it's fair to even call these touring cars. They are much, much closer to being GT class machines, but they're classified by Polyphony as touring cars, so I have to treat them as such. But personally, I would be more satisfied with them if they were GT cars. As it happens though, it's a nice loophole that you can exploit if you want to get a potential advantage. You get big power, modest weight, an all-wheel drive advantage, and very, very strong all-round performance. The handling is great, the speed is great, obviously the acceleration is great, and being a PD original, as with many of the other fictional touring cars, you can also paint it, which is an interesting advantage if you're into that, or is meaningless if you're not, basically. But overall, for 234 grand, you can't really go wrong with this car. So if you're looking for a strong all-round touring car, you can pretty much go for any of the Skyline GTR based machines. I just personally like this one more because the R33 is my favourite Skyline. But whichever one you go for, they're all very strong, dependable and capable cars. And that's it for this particular episode. So I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.